What's up? This is Nick and Prajeet.
And this is On Soccer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we've got a very special guest on the On Soccer podcast, someone who's in charge of raising and grooming the youth and really seeing how the future of this beautiful game turns out in our country. We've got the coach of the U-20 men's national team, Anthony Hudson. How are you doing today, Anthony?
I'm good. How you doing, gents?
Pretty well. Yeah, just to start off, we know, are you in Chicago right now?
I'm in Chicago, yeah, but we're not as locked down as you guys over there.
What's life like in Chicago for you, working with U.S. Soccer?
It's good. You know, it's been really good, but very different, because when I first got here, I was in the office every day, and then very soon after that, we went into lockdown. So my experience so far has been just really different, very like it has for everyone. But what we have been doing, especially as the sort of months have gone on, we've been doing a lot of meetings together as a staff, remotely, virtually, and they've been really good. You know, they've been good. We've had a lot of time together as a staff, and looked at players and talked about players and discussed tactics and styles of play. So that side of it's been good. We're just not in the office. That's the challenging part.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys still been like meeting at the soccer house, or like in general, just like what's been going on with that, and like what's it like working there even when we're not in like a quarantine time like this?
Yeah, look, when I was there before the lockdown, it was good. It's like I don't know if you guys know the soccer house. It's like a beautiful old sort of antique-y type house. It's just a really nice building. Loads of little small rooms, and you literally, I mean, it's in like a horse shape. And it took me 2 or 3 weeks to really find my way around, because you can get lost in there, and but it's really cool. It's a cool building. And then there's a lot of departments in there as well, so it's good because you're walking around, you can chat with people and get to know people, so that side of it was really good. And then obviously since then everything's been done virtually like we are now, but it's still been good.
So are you guys, like, I'm curious, I think the house is so cool. Are you all like eating lunch together? Like, are you sharing lunch with Greg Berhalter and stuff like that, or?
Well, we don't all eat together, but it's I would say it's probably like most offices, in the sense that you have certain departments may spend more time together, so they might, when they go out for lunch, 2 or 3 people might stay with that department, or the whole department, whole of that department to go out. So the coaches, I know prior to the lockdown, I went out for lunch with the staff a few times, and and then people are either on tour. You've got different teams are away, so people aren't there for certain periods. So it's fairly relaxed, but just it is a really it's just a cool environment. You know what I mean? Everyone's you can literally wander into any room and just start chatting to people, and it's a good atmosphere in there.
Mm-hmm. And I've got to say, I love the pink Jordan hoodie. So I'm wondering, like, do you have like a certain like thought process when it comes to like your sideline outfits for game days? And like, do you and Greg, for example, sort of get a little competitive about who looks better on the sidelines?
No, we've never had that conversation. I probably would never wear something like I've got in now. I was feeling brave today, so I put a pink hoodie on. So, but I haven't been outside yet. So, but yeah, no. Look, I think everyone's different. I think you have, I think when you're playing as well, I think you have your own routines, and I think the key thing is you want to feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. I always like on a game day having a routine of, as you're getting ready to go down and do your last meeting and getting ready, you have your shirt and your suit and your tie and all that. And I think it's important to look to represent the club or the national team, in a respectful way. So I think it's important to, to look the part that way. But yeah, and I think obviously the game is obviously changing as well. There's a lot of different coaches wear different things. I think I'm probably a little bit more old school, and I like, just really formal, professional suits, that type of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just kind of transitioning to your career, you're the U-20 U.S. soccer head coach. We both listened to your interview with the BSI guys, and you kind of mentioned Jose Gallegos. Is that how you say his last name?
Gallegos, yeah.
Gallegos. So I'm just interested. Do you have any other young youth players that maybe avid U.S. men's national team fans might know of that are rising up in the ranks?
Yeah, I think I think this period has been good for everyone, and I can only speak about this period in terms of what the fans are seeing and certainly what I've been seeing. But because of the amount, because of the lockdowns and the amount of games in such a short space of time, I think it's just given a lot of young players a chance. So I think a lot of the names are becoming familiar to US national team fans now. But if players that have impressed me are like people like Kevin Paredes and Moses Nyman, and there's a kid in the USL, Hayden Sargis, Caden Clark, um, Sebastian Berhalter, Aidan Morris. I thought the other night, the past couple of games, I've been really impressed with Aidan in the last game. So the list is quite long actually of players, young players. I mean, Caden Clark over the last few games has been outstanding.
Yeah.
So I think, and again, I'm not even mentioning the more senior of those younger ones, the Cole Bassett's and those types of guys, that are still very young. Actually, they're the senior guys now. So there's it's an exciting time, and there's a really good, hungry group of under 20s coming through.
I'm curious to know, so being an under 20 men's coach, how do you sort of evaluate whether the player has the long-term skill needed to really succeed and be part of the U.S. soccer program, and not just because I know a lot of times it's difficult to evaluate whether a player really can perform long-term versus whether they're only the type of player to perform for a couple of short bursts of seasons and then on.
Yeah, I think you try and project their skill set and really look for, if a player possesses any really outstanding qualities, and you try and compare that against other top players in their age group. You try and compare it against senior players, and I think the other side of it is that the mindset of a player. Just looking at game intelligence, how he learns, his capacity to learn, mental toughness, responding to setbacks, all of these things, build a picture in the coach's mind of how far you think a player can go and continue to learn and develop. And a lot of that is, obviously what you see and when you work with players, and obviously how the player, how he interacts with you as well, and you really get an understanding of the personality of the player. I mean, there's been some players that when you talk to, you see them play, and if we're starting off that all of these players are very, very good players, but there's certain players that you can over time you just have conversations with, and you just know that this player has the absolute determination, willpower, nothing's going to get in his way, absolutely hungry to learn and develop, wants information, wants coaching. What can I do next? How can I improve? Can you help me? Takes responsibility, and they're the type of players when you start forming your analysis of a player. These things are really important.
Yeah, and you were announced to the media in January 2020 that you were the U-20 head coach, and pretty soon after, you had to announce a squad for the upcoming games. What was that process like? Coming out with a squad so quickly and kind of getting the job.
Yeah, it was a really quick turnaround, and I got the call from Ernie, and it was something that I was really so excited for, really proud to be offered the opportunity. But the timing of it was so close to the camp that actually the squad really had been picked for me, and I think that's pretty normal. If you're joining a team quite late, and even I remember my first tour with New Zealand, because of the timing I got the job. You have to notify the clubs, 2 weeks in advance that this player is requested for the national team. So if you get appointed within that time, the squad unfortunately they have to pick a squad. And sometimes you're fortunate enough to be in those discussions, depending on how the contract negotiations are going on. But this one, I remember the squad had been picked, and which was fine for me because I, to be honest, you know, that I needed to really improve my knowledge of the whole player pool. So I think it would have been unfair for me to make decisions such early on, and I think I had to rely and lean on other staff that had been working with the players, the talent ID guys, and in the end, the squad actually that we went with. That since then, what I've learned about the squad has been pretty sound, really, in terms of decisions and the quality I saw in the camp.
Mhm. What do you think are some main differences or challenges that you face coaching a U-20 team versus like like the New Zealand national team or like Colorado and the MLS? Do you think that it's more difficult to coach younger kids, or like what has that been like for you?
No, I think firstly, I think this is probably one of the first teams I think I've coached where, in relation to our competition, we actually have a very talented group of players, and that's not to downplay our previous teams, but I think we'd all, in my previous jobs, I think myself, the staff, players would all agree that we're always the underdogs. I mean, when you're playing with New Zealand and you're going to play against Portugal and Mexico's and these teams, you're up against it every single time. Same when I was in the Middle East with Bahrain. You're playing against bigger teams, whether it's Iran or whether it's Kuwait, Qatar. These are all Saudi Arabia. These are all giants in relation to Bahrain. So there's definitely now with the US team definitely a feeling of actually we have some real quality. We have some players that are doing outstanding things all around the world, in Europe, in America, and we should really see ourselves in such a way that, especially in the region, we now should be expecting and approaching games differently to how I've had with previous teams. So I don't think there's any major challenges coaching the under 20s. I think it's a real honor. It's an amazing job. It's an amazing role. And I, since the start of the pandemic or January, we haven't had a camp. So I'm just desperate to get back out there with the players and start working with them.
Yeah, and you mentioned your time in Colorado. You've seen a multitude of MLS games. I'm curious, like, what are some names in MLS that maybe like unknown players that you thought were really good, other than like the big DP players?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have to say, and I'm probably a little bit biased. I mean, I've been impressed with some of the younger players this year. I think like Julian Araujo at LA Galaxy. I think he's really impressed me. He's impressed me because he wasn't in the team at the start of the season. He got into the team playing in a position that's not his position. Played it right midfield. What it's not his strongest position, and then he did so well and showed so much quality in different areas. Not just as a player, but his mentality. I mean, he plays like a senior player. He's a tough kid. And then he did so well. They moved him into his strongest position at right back, and he's really impressed me. And even like Cole Bassett in the last few games for Colorado, I thought was outstanding. I think his game is continues to improve, and I think his performance he's infectious for his team. He's just, you have some players that and Julian's one of them. Just their personality on the field, they're infectious for their teammates, and I think Cole is that way. So is Julian, and probably senior players. Off the top of my head, I like players like Johnny Russell was now getting into form at Kansas. I think he's a very different type of player. He's like an old school type winger, but he's just he's a player that he's exciting to watch. Before he got injured, Paul Arriola. I love Paul Arriola. I think he's an outstanding player. So yeah, but I would say the young guys are doing really well.
And then overall, I'm curious just to learn about your projections for the future of MLS, especially in this decade. Do you really see some like concrete changes in like the play quality and like what's coming out of there, and like what do you foresee in the near future for the league?
Yeah, I think it's not even a question of where the league's going. I don't think there's no doubt whatsoever. And I don't think it can. It's not even giving my opinion. I think if you just look at the first of all, the infrastructure, stadiums are getting better. Stadiums are not only filling up, but with the bigger stadiums, they're full every game, every home game, pre-pandemic. The training grounds now, there's some training grounds in this country that are up there with the best in the world, if not the best in the world. And then you look at the level of quality in players, it's improving. It really is improving. And you used to have a lot of the time where it was just you had quality up front, and then players were fielding around that. Now you're getting quality all around the field, and so the level's getting better. And if I see before the pandemic certain matches, whether it was LAFC or down in Atlanta or Seattle Sounders, I mean there's some of the games that are probably not just close to being really good European games, but sometimes they're actually, in terms of crowd and atmosphere and intensity and quality, I would say they're better than some of the games over there as well. So, and just the way the country is, the league's only going to go in one direction. The way Don Garber has driven the league, and the way the people that have built this league, or the people that are part of it, it's only going to get stronger and stronger for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of people know you as a coach. What were you like as a player, or what players would you maybe compare your skills to?
Yeah, I obviously finished when I was probably early 20s. I was at West Ham as an apprentice, and then I went out to Holland and played for NEC Nijmegen. Look, the reality is I started coaching early for a reason, which is I didn't reach the heights that I always dreamt of as a player. Probably didn't have the quality and the necessities that you have to make it consistently at the highest level. I was a midfielder, box to box, a decent player, not the quickest. I think pace was always probably an issue, but I think when I sort of fell into coaching, I loved it, and I've loved it ever since. I just love everything about the job, about the profession of being a coach. Being able to work with people and help people aspire to achieve things and help improve individuals, and work in a team, in a group, towards fighting for something. Your own personal development as a coach has so many facets to it. Technically, tactically, psychologically. It's just a constant. It's constant growth, and it's an incredible job to have, and obviously sport to be in.
Yeah, and then I'm curious to know, just like as you transitioned into coaching, obviously like you've been in the business for a while and you have a pretty strong coaching identity, which is like why you are today. So like I've watched a lot of like coaching documentaries and like the Tottenham doc recently, and like like Jose Mourinho, for example, he has this one quote he always like says to the players, like, be a bastard on the pitch, like that's his one thing, be a bastard. And like a lot of like our Jim Harbaugh, our football coach, has like certain coaches quotes like that. So I'm wondering, just like over your time, like as a coach, like what do you think is specifically about your philosophy is different that you try to implement in your players, and like what's like a certain like nugget or a quote or phrase that like you think that you try to implement in the back of your players' minds, like at a lot of the teams you're at?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think coaching, what you learn as you develop as a coach and gain more experience is coaching is all about the context you're working with. And I think a lot of the teams, like I shared before, a lot of teams we've been underdogs, and we going away. And in New Zealand, I think in the 3.5-4 years that I was there, we had 2 games at home, and the rest were away from home, just because of the nature of where New Zealand is, and being able to, not a lot of teams in a 10-11 day window want to fly to New Zealand and play a game, and and spend 4 days of those that window traveling. So we had to go into other people's countries and play, which after a while it becomes tough, because you never got your home crowd. You're always up against, and you're playing some big teams. So I think the key thing for me was always about being brave. We even with Bahrain, you want to upset the big boys, and you want to do things that no one believes that you can do. and you want to beat the big teams. And to do that, I think that constantly trying to instill bravery into the players. Bravery, not just by, your words and how you're talking to them and setting out exactly what the intention is for the game, but then also backing it up and showing them examples and reasons as to why we can be brave, because we've got this quality, that quality, and when we do this as a team, we can be like this, and showing previous experiences where we've been better than the bigger teams. So I think bravery has been one of the biggest things that you try and instill, certainly. But again, it's all contextual. It's all coaching is very much coaching with the group you have in front of you.
Yeah, and then you hear like anecdotes about, what players do after a big win. They maybe go out, grab a few drinks, or they go to the club. What are the coaching staff doing after a big win?
It's funny. I think it depends if you're home or away. If you're away from home, you might, and depending on the result, okay, after a big win. So if you're away from home, it's nice and easy. You have your bite to eat, and then you can go and have a few drinks locally and close to the hotel, and just as a staff, and you speak about the game, and you just sort of wind down. I think at home it's a little bit different because people get back to their families. We're not like the players, and we know that the next day you're analysing the game and you're thinking about the game and you're getting ready for Monday, and you sort of so you do. Everyone's different. I'm sure there's staff out there that might be closer to the players in terms of what they go out and have a good time and all that, and that's great as well. I think again, you have to do what you find is right for you after a game, after a win. What's right for the staff? What's going to be best for the staff? You might be a staff that doesn't do anything after a game, but then after 7 games, you might think, do you know what? We need to go out as a staff. We're not going to talk about soccer. We're not going to talk about the game. We're just going to go out and have a good time and just take a break from it. So yeah, everyone's different, but we're certainly not extreme and crazy as probably you may expect.
Do you find yourself hanging out with the players a lot or often, or not really?
Not really. I think over time, if you're working with players for a longer period of time, you get close to players, and if you bump into players outside of the club, I think if you have a respectful relationship with players, I've always felt like players are first of all, people first, and give people respect, and so I've always found pretty much to have good relationships with the players. So when you see them outside or in different places, I don't think there's any awkwardness or I think it's just normal. I think you build close relationships with your players. Obviously, every coach is going to have certain places they've been to where some players have just not. There's been differences, but for the most part, I think if you build those types of relationships, I think those relationships are the same whether you're in or outside the club.
Yeah, and we've talked about MLS players a lot. You're from England. Who's the best English MLS player? Not based on what they did prior to coming to MLS, but what they did maybe within the league.
That's it's a good question, because I think like the obvious ones would be, like Robbie Keane or what David Beckham did for the league. I think David Beckham was outstanding. I watched the documentary on what he did. I watched it the other night again. It's the second time I watched it, and he's outstanding. What the lift he gave the league, and also the quality that he delivered. A lot of the time he was injured. He had that ankle injury, and but and obviously this is probably biased for me, but we had Jack Price at Colorado, who I rate highly. I think he's an outstanding talent. I think he can play at a higher level. I think he's got some real quality. So he would be one where, for sure, I think he's come over and added value. In difficult times as well. He's got some real quality, and he's a great character as well.
Mm-hmm. And then just like on a lighter note, talking about some like stories and like your coaching experience and stuff like that. So when I was like a player in middle school, I was like the guy on the team that would always mess with the coach. Like I had a coach named Coach Paul, so he was a very bald guy, so I'd always make fun of him for that, hide cone, stuff like that. over like your experience, have you had any players on any teams that were like kind of like, you know, on the more practical joking side, like always like doing something kind of mischievous, or any good stories like that?
I'm trying to think. I think you always if I'm honest with you, you need characters like that.
Yeah.
You need it's good. It's good when you get players in your team that are, you know, good people, good, you know, good guys, but also there's a little bit of mischievous about them. You know, they like don't mind having a bit of a laugh and a joke, and they get on with the rest of the team, and it's good for the group. And I think in most teams I've been on, we've always had a player or two like that, and I think it's great. You need people like that in your team for sure.
Yeah, and I listened to a podcast that you were on the other day, and you kind of talked about, you know, when you lose a coaching job, what you kind of do to get back into it, whether it's, you know, reaching out to people or kind of just going to coaching sessions with a team that you're not a part of yet. What do you think are like the main key for like coaches if they, you know, are run out of a position to kind of get back into the game?
Well, I think there's a load of things. I think the first thing you need to do, you need to move on from the last experience and move on in the sense where you need to really get honest and figure out what went wrong and why it went wrong. And then if there's any deficiencies or any areas where you think you need to improve in, which invariably they are for all of us, we all have to keep improving. But certainly doing a really honest analysis of your responsibility, you know, why it didn't work out, what you could have done better, what you did well, but also, you know, what you could have done differently, better, and what you're going to do next time, and really get clear on that, because I think that process then allows you then to move forward and not be stuck in the past. And then it's a case of, you know, really getting enthusiastic again about the future and enthusiastic about learning, studying other teams, studying, you know, looking at players, speaking to other coaches. I think it's important to stay connected, going to meet different people, meet coaches. I know when I left Colorado, I moved briefly to Wisconsin, which you guys know very well.
Yeah.
I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and it's a beautiful place. It's such a, you know, great people. What a nice town, like a beautiful town. But for someone like me, who my life has been just 24/7 soccer, for someone like me, after I left Colorado, that was challenging. It probably wasn't a great decision, because from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, if I met people at the coffee shop or I went out to dinner with friends, there was never any conversation about soccer, ever. Or even if I attempted to bring it up, the response back to me was that no one understood. It was like I was talking about a foreign language. So I think you have to be in a place. I know, like in England, for example, if you're out of work, you know, it's easy just to go to games and go and watch a training session, because there's so many teams around, so many clubs around. So I think that's important. Staying connected to people. So what I did from Madison, I would jump on the flight and, you know, go down to Kansas or come up to Chicago or go to different places and get to games. Went to LA Galaxy, LAFC. That really helps, and it keeps you enthusiastic, and it also connects. You need to stay connected.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, you talk a lot about like not staying stuck in the past. So, you know, as we approach the end of this, like one thing that I'm really curious to know is, you know, coaching like the U-20 team, like obviously, like, you know, like last World Cup with our men's national team not making it. What do you sort of like, you know, how do you implement a culture of like, you know, like players that want to like thrive in the future and be the best version of themselves? Like what do you think specifically about your style or your philosophy is going to like change like the mental aptitude these players have approaching the game and for their future?
Yeah, I think it's the good thing about what US Soccer are building, and with Greg, with the national team, is we all want to be aligned. It's important that any players that move up from our team to Greg's team or to Jason's team, that they stay there and that they impress enough that they don't come back down to us. And I think in order for them to impress in a very short, and let's be honest, you've got 2 or 3 days to impress, and then there's a game, and then you've got maybe 2 more sessions sometimes one session, then another game, and then either you've impressed or the first team might not see you for a year or 6 months. So in order for them to be able to best prepare them, we have to build a culture that's, you know, high on professionalism, you know, a culture that's, you know, meaningful, and connects the player to what it means to represent the country, how important it is to, you know, what it means to wear the shirt, wear the badge. And these are all things that are implemented in the first team that, you know, we're aligned in, you know, the way we train, the professionalism of how we want the environment to be, how we want training to be, how we work, you know, how we want the dining rooms to look, how we want just the level of professionalism in the environment. We want it to mirror the first team and that standard that the first team are setting. So players know that when they go up there, they know exactly what they got to do on the field, but also when they're off the field, they know how they need to behave, how they need to act, respect, work ethic, all those different things, how they need to, you know, listen in the meetings when they're doing the technical meetings. Nothing should be foreign to them when they step up in the first team.
Yeah, and just as we come to a close, we really appreciate you taking the time. We always kind of ask our guests a concluding question, you know, any advice that you'd give to young college students. A lot of our listeners are maybe players in college that are looking to get to the next level, or maybe they're interested in soccer business. What's like one piece of advice you would give them?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think coaching is a really interesting profession, and it's I think the skill set and the way in which you work can be applied to any profession really, any profession that really demands you to keep growing and developing. But I think, you know, I think the biggest thing is purpose. I think you need to have purpose. You need to have, you know, an inspirational dream. You have to have something that challenges you. You know, as probably corny as it may sound, is, you know, you have to have a dream. You have to have something that you aspire to, and that excites you and enthuses you, and it's got to be big enough that it challenges you and it pressures you. And so that would be one of the biggest things. I think it's when I meet people and, you know, they talk about, you know, when they were in college and when they were younger, they had a dream of being X or whatever or this, and just life circumstances has pushed them in a direction where now they're doing something that they're not the most happy about doing. And I always feel really sad about that, because I think the greatest gift you can have is having a dream and having purpose and having something that really you can work towards. Because the last thing I'll say on that is like, once you're committed to it, like once you're seriously committed to, you know, becoming, you know, achieving that dream or going along that journey, once you're committed, it doesn't matter what's thrown in your way, good or bad, setbacks, challenges, how tough it gets, how lonely it gets, how hard it gets, all of those things, the sacrifice you have to make, it just doesn't matter. You just commit and you keep going, you keep developing, you keep finding a way, you keep adjusting, you keep, you know, if you get another setback, okay, find out, get honest, keep learning, keep developing. So I think that's the life of a coach. It's very much like that. And I think it applies to pretty much most line of professions there is.
Got it. Well, you know, thanks again for giving giving us with your time. You know, we really appreciated talking to you, and you know, we look forward to seeing how the young generation of this country's soccer shapes out, and you know, we're really excited. So thanks again.
Gents, it's great to meet you both. Really good to speak to you.